Hi, I'm Winthrop Rogers. I'm the senior editor for NRT English here in Sulaimani in Iraq's Kurdistan region. With the US election just weeks away, we sat down with three students from the American University of Iraq, Suleimani, to talk about their feelings about the US election, their perspective on what it means for Iraq and the Kurdistan region, and to hear their feelings about what the election means to them. So.
Okay, my name is Suren Jamal. I study international study at AIS, and I came from Halabja. And I have a focus on U.S. election, especially how their foreign policy perspective will shape different political framework in the region, and in Iraq particularly.
Great.
I'm Fatimah Fadhil. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a freshman in international studies as well.
I'm Bawan Awat. I'm an IT graduate from the American University. I'm from Sulaimani.
Great. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. Let's get into it. So, how closely are you guys following the election?
How we are feeling about the election.
How closely are you following it?
Okay, since I became a student at the AIS, and since that I learned English and the U.S. foreign policy, it became a very concern for me because we know that United States is the most powerful country, especially in the Middle East. It has a broad range of impacts and foreign policy for the region, and especially we are as a Kurd, and we are still need more U.S. support, and that pushed me to understand U.S. election and it is foreign policy in the Middle East.
I'm following it very closely since seeing how the last election took effect, and knowing that next election now I am eligible to vote. I took it as my duty to follow and research it thoroughly so I can make the right choice, in my opinion.
When did you start? Did you follow it all the way through the primaries, or have you just sort of been picking it up as it gets closer to November 3rd?
Yeah, so beginning of the primaries, like while those campaigns were running, I started following it until now.
Yeah.
I've been following the last 3 election cycles in the U.S. Because I'm very interested in the issues, even on a state level. So I would say I'm following it pretty closely.
Yeah, I would say so. Do you think that that's common here in the Kurdistan region? Like when you talk with your family and your friends, are they following it as closely as you, or are you unique in this regard?
I think the U.S. election is important for the Iraqi and for the Kurds, and most of people that academic level, and they would pay attention to this election. But at the ordinary level and ordinary people, those people that do not know English, and they don't pay much attention for it.
Sure.
I feel my family, well, the ones that aren't American, that are only from Iraq, kind of follow it, but not with as close of an eye. It kind of became somewhat of a show at this point.
Sure.
So they do like to talk about it, tease me about it, joke about it, but none of them really like go down into the details of what each candidate is promising and what experience they have. And because it does affect them, but it won't affect them on a national level because they're not in America. They only care about like the foreign affairs of each candidate.
But as you say, it's a big show as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's dramatic. It's a roller coaster. So yeah.
I would say people don't really follow it closely until the candidates are already decided, and especially for the last 2 election cycles, because there was like much more showmanship than usual. I think it became a show of its own, as you said. So people are following it very closely.
Yeah, for sure. So as we've sort of already identified a little bit, there are sort of several aspects to an election. It's not just the issues. It's not just the personality. It's not just the process. Which of those are you really following yourself? You know, are you following the personalities, Are you digging down deep into policy, or are you really interested in the process of how it works?
Okay, maybe it's not important for us how the process is going on, but the impact and the outcome of the process, and especially after November 3rd, will be important for the region.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been focusing on U.S. foreign policy of each candidate, and just we have seen that Trump's foreign policy during these 4 years, and we have a long historical background of Joe Biden's experience and dealing with different political parties in the region. And I think what is important for me as an international student is that how Biden's long experience with the region will shape the outcome of this election, and how his policy will determine different political and economic events that will occur after the election.
What he said, you have to look at each candidate's experience. Like Joe Biden, again, as he said, was vice president, and Trump was president for 4 years, but before that he had no experience in any political offices. He was just a businessman, and a failing businessman at that. And I don't think their personality matters as much as their character, if you understand the difference that I'm saying. How does each candidate hold himself up? Does one make a mockery of his purpose, or does the other one take it more seriously? As well as looking what they have promised in the past and if they've kept those promises, because how can you trust them now if before
Sure.
you trusted, or people trusted them and they didn't follow through with what they promised them?
I would say what I follow closely are the issues, but that's mostly during the primaries, because after that, especially like with these two candidates, they don't really talk about the issues as much or as deeply. They mostly talk in platitudes and character and bringing the American spirit back and stuff like that, which is not as interesting, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Sure. The differences between the two parties are stark, and there's less room for nuanced policy debate, for sure. And you've been following the election for several cycles now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is there anything about the process that you see as different this time?
I would say for the last two election cycles, a big shift happened in the Overton window, where someone like Bernie Sanders came in and talked about issues that no one talked about before, like universal health care and free education, and that shifted the whole conversation. Now, even the candidates that usually are not for these kind of policies, like Joe Biden, have to talk about it, basically, because the conversation has been brought up.
Yeah. What sort of issues are your families talking about? Why don't we go in the middle?
Well, most of them, again, because we are from here originally, are concerned with the foreign affairs and their military and tariffs, stuff like that, the aspects that affect the other countries, not just America. And then there's like me and my brother, we care more about the national policies that might be executed with each candidate.
Sure.
Yeah.
My family and I focus on if Joe Biden will win the election and what will happen for the Kurdistan and for Iraq. And just let me show you how why we love Joe Biden to be a president of the United States. And Joe Biden has a good relation with Kurds, and especially with two ruling parties. This dates back to 1991, when Joe Biden, as the chairman of Senate Foreign Committee, visited Kurdistan region, and he gave a speech in the parliament. And one of the local said to Biden, "Mr. Biden, we teach our children that only the mountain are our friends." Joe Biden said, "Not the mountains are not only your friend." This shows that Joe Biden is really concerned with the Kurdish issue, and he has helped us, especially in 2003, when he authorized the vote for the invasion of Iraq. And the invasion of Iraq was a gift for Kurds. Of course, it has some negative effect, but it was really important for Kurds to the invasion of the Iraq.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say people here generally focus on foreign policy because obviously the other issues don't affect them, especially with the tension that is happening right now with Iran and Turkey in the region and their effects on us and other countries in the Middle East.
Yeah.
For me personally, I do care about the issues that even don't affect me, like healthcare and free education, because it would have an effect on the political spectrum in other countries and hopefully on us as well if they move to I don't know, a more lefted position.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say I do care about them because of that reason.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about those sort of regional issues that you mentioned a little bit? You know, obviously, Kurds and Iraqis have to deal with neighbors in Iran and Turkey and Syria for the most part, and you know, each candidate has policies with regard to those three countries. Do you see any of those as being, you know, when you think about the foreign policy of these two candidates, does your mind go to one of those countries in particular, or is it more general?
Yes, of course. Joe Biden's foreign policy, as we have seen before during the Obama administration, is to deal with the country as a sovereign state. For example, Trump's foreign policy during the previous 4 years has been through the lens of counterterrorism and through the lens of restraining Iranian influence in the region. For example, on multiple occasions, Donald Trump has said that we are in Iraq because we wanted to watch Iranian activities in the region, and this is not good for Iraqis and for Kurds. And we want a president that protect our sovereignty in context of international relations, and we don't want a state that use Kurds and Iraqis against a side of this international conflict that has been in the region for many times.
Sure.
I kind of feel like the Democratic Party has a history of raising tensions in the Middle East, especially in Iraq. It does mostly affect the more Arab-populated parts, Baghdad, Basra, not the Kurdistan region as much. If anything, it actually does benefit. So you have two populations here, the Kurdish population, the Arabic population. The Democratic Party would benefit the Kurdish population, whereas the Republican Party would benefit the Arabic population. So it is kind of really conflicting to choose one party on this issue.
Sure. Okay.
I would say the difference in foreign policy is not that big between the two candidates or the parties in general. Under the Obama administration, where Joe Biden was vice president, they were bombing 7 countries, and there still are in the Trump administration. So it's not as a stark of a difference as people think it is. Of course, there are key differences, like Trump let go of the Iran nuclear deal, and it will probably come back under Biden. There will be better relationships with Iran and maybe Turkey as well. But I don't think the difference is as big as people think.
Makes sense. We're already starting to get a sense of the preferences that you three might have, and you're a voter, so you know that is very directly consequential. But let's talk about those preferences and why you've come to that conclusion. So why don't we start in the middle there?
I'm still not 100%, but I am leaning more towards Biden, just for the reason that he's going to bring more benefits to the American population, just like, as he said, healthcare, hopefully reverse all the policies that Trump had put in that kind of held back women, you know, the stuff on abortions and all that. And as well as I hope that now that the Supreme Court is more Republican, that he doesn't have as much power to do as he may internationally, because like I said, if the Democratic Party comes back into power, into office, it won't be that great for us here in Iraq. So
So a preference to Biden, but hoping that he's a bit constrained.
yeah.
Okay. There we go.
I don't really have a preference for any of the candidates. Of course, objectively, Biden is better when I look at what I want from the issues.
Sure.
But I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I still am. I was hoping he would be the Democratic candidate, but that didn't happen. The thing is, with a neoliberal like Joe Biden, there will be no fundamental change. It will be very incremental. Nothing will be done. And with Trump, he will just stay the same. He'll reverse like some democratic policies that have been implemented. Healthcare, especially like pre-existing conditions, right now is a big issue. So I don't really like any of the candidates. America has been stuck in this choosing the lesser of two evil for the past election cycles, and it's not a good place to be. I want ranked choice voting to be implemented, so people can start voting for like third parties, and that will bring good change to America, I think.
I went to undergrad in Maine, which is one of the only places in the U.S. that uses ranked choice. So that's a very detailed and interesting point. So, all right.
Okay, my preferences for each candidate depends on how each candidate treats Kurds.
Okay.
And we have seen Trump that Trump has undercut United States position and through his words, through his deeds and action in the region. For example, Trump has ordered the withdrawal of the U.S. troops out of Turkey, out of Syria, and
sure.
And this brought more concern for the regional allies, because Joe Biden said that Mr. Trump just sold out Kurdish allies, and Kurdish allies in Rojava, they have paid a heavy price and to fight the ISIS caliphate. But just in one moment and just in a night, Mr. Trump said, "Oh, we withdraw and we pull out of our forces from Rojava and from Syria." And Mr. Trump is very controversial, is very unstable. We cannot predict his action, and I think as Kurds, we need a president that is more stable and respect the U.S. institution and does not involve, does not show his character as a determinant of foreign policy. Sure. Of course, we have. Personally, I like that Mr. Biden will win the election, because I think that will be great for Kurds, and they will. Kurds will be safe much more in his term.
Yeah, is that you mentioned Rojava in Syria. Is that something that comes up regularly when you talk with your families and your friends and people in the bazaar, or what is that something that they remember and feel very strongly about?
Yes, it was a public interest for Kurds, and because we have said that Kurds are they have only mountain as a defense as a defense wall, but when Mr. Trump pull out his troops out of Syria, and many Kurds America betrayed Kurds, and that would really catastrophic for our allies, because we have a good relation with the United States, but the United States treated us in some occasion as a non-state actor and to protect his interests in the region.
Yeah. Is that also the case? Do you hear when you talk with your families? Do you hear about Rojava? Do you hear about Kirkuk? Do you hear about or do you hear about 1991 and 2003. What are the sort of meaningful? We've said that foreign policy is really important, is the most important sort of issue for people here when they're thinking about the election. What aspect of foreign policy? Are there any specific events that people keep coming back to, in your view?
I would say that Rojava events were very impactful, especially on Kurds, because for some reason they like Trump a lot here, which is beyond me, but after he did that, there was a big change in their thought process about Trump. what he did, even the anti-neoliberal, anti-imperialist voices didn't support that decision, because this is one of the few regions where pulling out troops like that with no plan has huge effects, and it obviously did, and a lot of terrible things happened to the cities there.
I mostly talk about it with my friends, again, because they also live here in the Kurdistan region and they have friends and families that are affected by it. And I'm kind of grateful for that because they enlightened me on it. I feel like it didn't get that much attention in mainstream media, the effects of pulling out the troops, what it was. Only a few sites I saw talked about it. And it kind of made me feel ashamed that this is the man who represents where I'm from, that he just put a bad image on us, that we're backstabbers or betrayers, or like we won't keep our promises, or even if there were implied promises, you know, you still have to keep them.
Yeah. Let's turn a little bit to the process. So as I think we talked about, like, the election process in the U.S. has been going on for a long time. It's different from an election in the U.K. or from here, where you have a few weeks and then it's over. It's a very long campaign, and it's complex as well. Each state has its own electoral laws and systems, and we have the Electoral College and all of that. What do you think about the U.S. electoral process?
Okay. I think it's a complex process, but the complexity of the process shows that election is very important for United States. But because they have restrained, they have put many barriers on the way of each candidate, because it's a democratic state and they want a president that is popular and has a good character for the protection of national security and international standards of the United States. And but in most of our region's countries, an election it's just the continuous of the previous regime for ruling, and they don't, because the importance of election dates back to when the founder fathers institutionalized the process, and in order to show that how election is important and how they bring public attention to the election.
Sure.
I would say the Electoral College is a way too complicated process, and I don't think it brings the benefits that they wanted to bring. And it's absurd that a candidate will win the popular vote and might not win the elections. To me, that should not be the case. But what I'm very concerned about in the American election process is basically how the candidates on their campaigns are funded. That is the biggest issue in America right now, where corporations just donate money to these candidates and their super PACs, and there's no way for that candidate to be not biased and not go for the policies that will benefit these corporations if he's taking all this money from them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of attention is put on the presidential elections. I feel like more attention needs to be put on the primaries, because as he said earlier, he was a Bernie Sanders supporter, so was I, and I was really disappointed that he lost the primaries. I feel like if more people were educated on how the primaries worked and how the presidential candidates are actually chosen, it could be beneficial, because then we wouldn't have to choose the lesser of two evils, because we have to vote for who you can vote to vote for president. It is, like you said, very long and complicated. But I feel even in school, I don't remember them putting much emphasis on the primaries, only the Congress, Supreme Court, the presidential office, the vice president, and that. Nobody ever talks about the others. Like, people need to vote in primaries. They need to vote for their senators, their representatives, their mayors, and their presidents, not just the president.
Right. Okay, last word. Make a prediction. Biden or Trump?
I think according to the polls that have been conducted, and Mr. Biden will win nationally and in international level, but we know that the Electoral College will determine the outcome of the election. In 2016, Hillary Clinton's vote was 2 million, is more than the Trump's vote is, but still Donald Trump won the election. Yeah. I hope Mr. Biden will win the election.
Okay. But
As I stated before, I do support Biden. But however, from what we learned in the last election, the popular majority vote kind of wasn't that reliable. It was split 50-50. Hillary was kind of up by a little bit. She still lost. The same thing is
okay.
shown in this election.
So Biden.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
I would say, according to the polls, Biden seems to be way ahead, and he's probably going to win. But I wouldn't be surprised if
Okay.
Trump won.
Some distrust around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so
everyone,
much
for participating, and
Right.
stay up late, watch it, see how it goes, and keep turning into NRT for coverage of the U.S. election as it gets closer over the next 2 weeks, and tune in on November 3rd and 4th for our coverage then. Thanks.